Hello Year 10, today we're going to do some essay writing practice based on the play Macbeth. Before we start, you'll need to get all of your notes from the previous videos that you've watched, especially the notes that you've made on the theme of power. Macbeth is part of your literature GCSE. It's from paper 1, component 1. And you usually get 2 questions. The first is an extract question where you get a small part of the play and you have to focus just on the events or the character in that part of the play. And the second question is the essay question. And it's this essay question that we're going to be focusing on and you're going to be working towards. For this type of question, you have to remember quotations from across the entire play. So that's why it's really important that you have your notes on the theme of power in front of you now. The first thing I'd like you to do is read this paragraph, which is taken from an essay with the title, Explore How Shakespeare Presents Macbeth's State of Mind Throughout the Play. And as you read, I want you to think about what went well, so what's good about this paragraph, and how could this response be improved? You should have read through the paragraph by now, and now I'm going to go through it and highlight as I go. By Act 3, Macbeth is feeling frustrated and paranoid. This is good. I'm going to put my what went well in green. So this is a strong opening because immediately the student has told us where the evidence they're talking about comes from in the play, and immediately linking to the question, which is Macbeth's state of mind. Macbeth is feeling frustrated and paranoid. So that's a very clear point this person has made. He has just been appointed king after murdering Duncan and is now thinking about the threat that Banquo presents to his reign. So that's also strong because they've contextualised the scene as well within the play. They've talked about why this particular scene is important. Macbeth's repetition of fear. Good, we've got repetition, so this is a device, is what Shakespeare has done on purpose, and a nice short and concise quotation, and referral to safety at the start of his soliloquy tells the audience that he does not feel secure as king. Again, we've got key subject terminology, soliloquy, and referred to the audience as an audience, not the reader, because remember, this is a play, this is meant to be performed, therefore we are the audience. He compares his relationship with Banquo to Mark Antony and Caesar's, which shows that he suspects that Banquo may also act upon the witch's prophecies. So here he's referring to something that Macbeth says in his soliloquy, and he explains how that relates to another character in the play. And then a developed response. This reference also implies that Macbeth knows that Banquo, like Caesar, will eventually overpower him. This is ironic, as Macbeth is accusing Banquo of having too much ambition, when this is what Macbeth is guilty of. An audience may grow to dislike Macbeth due to his disloyalty to Banquo. Again, we've got reference to the audience there, and a device using irony. This is ironic, as Macbeth is accusing Banquo. So that's what went well in this paragraph. I want you to pause the video again and see if there's anything that you think could be improved upon. One thing that I think is missing here is evidence. We've got reference here to something that Macbeth says in this soliloquy, and we've got some direct evidence, fear, which is lovely, so they're zooming in on a key word there. But what would strengthen this response is more evidence. So I'd be looking for either evidence from the same scene, or even better, if the person was able to reference to another part of the play where Macbeth was feeling frustrated and paranoid. And finally, I would say this final line here, it seems a little bit like an add-on. Now, this is being particularly picky, and it's not really focused on the question. So I would just make sure that every point you make really focuses on the question. So if it's about Macbeth's state of mind, make sure that you are constantly linking back to that throughout your essay. This is now an improved version of the paragraph that we've just read and marked together. As I read through, I'm going to underline and talk through the improvements that have been made. By Act 3, Macbeth is feeling paranoid. Now, the only thing that's been changed here is that frustrated has been taken out. And we're just going to focus on this specific emotion. By doing this, this will ensure that the evidence that you select from the text will closely answer the question and closely link to the point that you're trying to make. So by Act 3, Macbeth is feeling paranoid. He has just been appointed king after murdering Duncan and is now thinking about the threat that Banquo presents to his reign. So no changes made there. Macbeth's repetition of fear and referral to safety at the start of his soliloquy tells the audience that he does not feel secure as king. Again, everything there is kept the same. He compares his relationship with Banquo to Mark Antony and Caesar's, which shows that he suspects that Banquo may also act upon the witch's prophecies. Again, no changes. This reference also implies that Macbeth knows that Banquo, like Caesar, will eventually overpower him. This is ironic, as Macbeth is accusing Banquo of having too much ambition when this is what Macbeth is guilty of. This paranoia intensifies later on in this act when he learns that Fleance escaped the murderers. So this is the second change that's been made. So in the previous slide, we noticed that what was lacking was a reference to another piece of evidence from another part of the play. So this is from the same act, Act 3, but just later on in that act. And this phrase here, paranoia intensifies, is good because it suggests character development or character change, which is always something that you should consider. Macbeth confesses that he feels cabined, cribbed, confined, bound in to saucy doubts and fears. Okay, so we have a quotation here, which is quite long. Perhaps we could reduce it down again. The harsh alliteration here could replicate a scratching sound, emphasising how trapped Macbeth feels by his own deeds. Okay, that's good. So we've got a device there, the alliteration in the cabined, cribbed, confined, creates that alliteration. An audience may feel that Macbeth is unstable and unable to control his emotions. Okay, so this audience reaction at the end has been changed slightly, so it closely answers the main question, which is Macbeth's state of mind. What you need to do now is create your own success criteria or checklist. This should be a list of 5 things that you need to include in a strong paragraph. You may want to go back over the previous 2 slides to see what comments were made about the 2 paragraphs to help you make this checklist. Now that you have your success criteria, I want you to try and write a paragraph answering the question on power. Explore how Shakespeare presents the theme of power throughout the play. On this slide, I have taken 2 quotations from the play that link to this theme of power. These quotations are both ones that feature in the video about power across the play. The first one is from Act 1, Scene 4, when Macbeth learns that Malcolm has become the Prince of Cumberland. And he says, "The Prince of Cumberland, that is a step on which I must fall down or else overleap. For in my way it lies. Stars, hide your fires, let not see my black and deep desires." I've highlighted the key language in that quotation. So if you're going to use that quotation, you only need to focus on the highlighted language. The second quotation that you could compare this first one to is in Act 3, Scene 2, when Macbeth says to Lady Macbeth, after he learns that Fleance has escaped the murderers, "We have scorched the snake, not killed it." So using your success criteria or your checklist and the sentence starter below if you need it, write one paragraph answering the question on power using two quotations. You can use either one of these two or another one from your own notes. Next, we have another model paragraph. This one focuses on the theme of violence. The question is, how does Shakespeare explore the theme of violence throughout Macbeth? Just like before, read through, see what they did well, what could be improved upon. Make notes as you go. Okay, regicide is a key theme throughout the play. Wonderful, great start. Really clear. Regicide being the act of killing a king, so already we've got some strong subject terminology, some strong links to context as well. So this person is very clear about what they're talking about, and they're referring to the play as a play. It is not a book, so that's good. This is depicted when Macbeth exclaims. Good. So exclaimed is more specific about how the character would have said something. So anytime that you can be really specific about how something is said in a play, you're going to get more marks from your examiner. Is this a dagger which I see before me? This rhetorical question in Act 2 shows that Macbeth might be losing his sanity and is more and more tempted to kill King Duncan. Again, so we've got some evidence there, a device, a rhetorical question in Act 2, so they've been very specific as to where this quotation comes from. Remember, if you don't know where exactly the evidence comes from in your essays, the beginning, the middle, or the end of the play is good enough. You don't have to know the specific acts and scenes. So if this person said the rhetorical question at the beginning of the play shows that Macbeth might be losing his sanity, that's fine. And he is more and more tempted to kill King Duncan. At the end of the soliloquy, lovely subject terminology again, he mentions the knell, which is a warning bell, and proclaims it invites me. Again, we've got this proclaims instead of says. This means that he has finally made up his mind to kill Duncan. This links the theme of violence because he is about to commit a crime and kill the king. Later we learn that Macbeth goes one step further and kills the guards too. Okay, good. So later we learn, so talking about something that happens slightly later on in the same scene, or the same act at least. The murder of King Duncan is violent. We know this because Macbeth himself says that the gashed stabs look like a breach in nature. Good. The verb gashed suggests something that is deep and suggests brutality. Good, we've got that. Zooming in on that key word gashed there as a verb. The contemporary audience. Good, so you've been specific as to what type of audience might be reacting, would be horrified with the scene as they would consider it a grave sin. Lovely, so we've got some context as well there. And once again, this is an improved version of the paragraph on violence. Have a read through and see if you can spot what has been changed and improved. Okay, so how does Shakespeare explore the theme of violence throughout Macbeth? Regicide is a key theme throughout the play. No changes there, still a strong opening. This is depicted when Macbeth has violent hallucinations and asks, "Is this a dagger which I see before me?" Okay, so the person's changed this to violent hallucinations, so being specific and very concise about how they're explaining what's going on, and asks, "Is this a dagger which I see before me?" This rhetorical question in Act 2 shows that Macbeth might be losing his sanity and he is more and more tempted to kill King Duncan. Later on in this act, Macbeth grows more violent and spontaneously kills the guards too. Okay, so there's this mention of Macbeth's character development or change in that he grows more violent. So always thinking about character development or change in your essays, and spontaneously kills the guards too. The murder of King Duncan is violent. We know this because Macbeth himself says that the gashed stabs look like a breach in nature. The verb gashed suggests something that is deep and suggests brutality. This idea links to where Macbeth is referred to as a butcher by Malcolm in the final scene. Okay, lovely. So this person has linked this idea of brutality and violence in Act 2 to the final act, Act 5, where Malcolm refers to Macbeth as a butcher king. So that's a lovely link there across the whole play. The theme of regicide continues right until the final scene when Macduff kills Macbeth, who he believes is a tyrant. Again, okay, good. So talking about regicide again. So again, focusing on your opening point. Right until the final scene when Macduff kills Macbeth, who he believes as a tyrant. Okay, lovely. Another quotation. A contemporary audience may be conflicted by the end of the play. So they're confused by the end of the play, as regicide is a grave sin. Okay, good. Still linking to the context there. However, Macbeth becomes so evil that perhaps they may have felt that his murder was justified. Okay, that's very good. So they're developing the audience's response and coming up with an alternative way in which an audience might react to the same scene. So now I want you to go back to your checklist that you created towards the beginning and add 2 more things to your checklist based on the second model answer that we've just gone through. So this is how you're going to structure your overall essay. So imagine your question was, how is Lady Macbeth presented throughout the play? So to begin with, you need to come up with 3 main points. So your first point might be that she is powerful and intimidating, and you would have to find evidence from across the play to make that point. Your second point might be that she is evil and manipulative, again finding evidence from across the play to make that point. And your third point might be that she is actually quite misunderstood and fragile, once again finding evidence from across the play to make this point. If you can, try and make your different points in your different paragraphs as varied as possible. If you do this, you'll be showing the examiner that you know the play really well, and you'll also ensure that your coverage of the play is very strong as well. So once you have your 3 main points, you then go on to your conclusion. So you give your overall opinion, or overall what was Shakespeare's intention for this character. And then if you have time, you go back and write an introduction, and you talk about the character or the theme, dependent on the question's importance to the plot. So my top tip for you would be to leave a physical space on your page when writing an essay like this, so that in the last 5 minutes or so, you can go back and write a very quick introduction.